The following broadcast is a Nighthawk Network presentation.
What up, everybody? What's going on? It's your boy E-Buck, and we are here to talk sports tonight. This is the Big Buck Sports Report. I am that dude, Big Buck, also known as the Nighthawk, as you know. And we are going to talk sports. It's been a while, man. Seems like I ain't been on the air talking sports in ever, but I am ready to talk to y'all about what's going on, about some of the things I looked at over the summer, couple quick stories, but the main focus this evening, we're gonna talk a little baseball, and we're gonna talk the W, as in the WNBA and what's going on throughout that season, as we are getting close to playoff time there as well. And we're gonna talk about whatever sport y'all want to discuss. Now, keep in mind, we are, of course, in the midst of NFL preseason, and we are in week 2. And to be honest, not overly thrilled about preseason at this point, as we start to see more and more teams play their starters less and less. It's kind of hard to really get into it. And for those degenerates out there that's betting preseason football, seek help. It ain't that deep. Not at all. Not at all. Anyway, let's get into it, y'all. Like I said, we're gonna start out with the baseball. Now, as you know, we are about midway August right now. Pennant races heating up. Not quite deep into playoff runs and such situations, but definitely something we got to think about. We got about good 50 games left in the season, 45 maybe. So yeah, it's time to start thinking about who might them make them their playoffs and what have you. Let us look at the standings right now. I have that information available for us to peruse right quickly. Let me find it for y'all right quick. Hold on, hold on. Here we go. In the American League, that is the standings as of the moment. We got in the East, the surprise team of the year by far, the Baltimore Orioles. That's right. I said the Baltimore Orioles are currently leading the American League East by 2.5 games over Tampa Bay, who basically been playing very good baseball for the most part up until these last couple weeks. They done kind of finally cooled off a little bit. In the meanwhile, Baltimore been steadily gaining all season, and lo and behold, here we are in the second week of August, and they are in first place in the American League East. Now, understand, the American League East is by far the toughest division in baseball this year. No doubts about it. As we go back to the little chart there, you will see that Baltimore is up by 2.5 games. Toronto is 7.5 behind. We got Boston at 10.5, and the Yankees, yes, those Yankees, are in fifth. But keep in mind, every team in the American League East has a 500 record or better. Cannot say the same in any of the other divisions in baseball. So you would think that not only is Baltimore or basically Tampa Bay going to win that division, but probably two of your wild card teams may possibly or probably come from the American League East also. Now, of course, to the Yankee fans who ask what's going on with your Yankees, well, understand, in most seasons such as this, usually by now they've been opening the purse strings and bought their way into playoff contention. That didn't really go on this year during the trade deadline. Wasn't a lot of milling and dealing that took place. So as a result, we basically got the Yankee team we pretty much started the year with, and that team is not up to par, particularly in their division where everybody is putting forth a better effort right now. Yeah, the Yankees are dealing with the usual injury bug that seems to plague them year after year, where most of their major big boppers, particularly Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, spend some time on the disabled list, and that tends to make the lineup not good. Keep in mind, usually this time of year is really when they get it popping and they start to hit a lot more home runs and do a lot more wins, particularly at home. And that bandbox of a ballpark that they call Yankee Stadium, where home runs just seem to jump off like But this year, not so much. So everything considered, it's looking like a year where at this point we don't have to worry about the Yankees making the playoffs, and I know that's going to upset a few of y'all. But hey, they can't win every year, okay? They got to have a couple years where not so great. Okay, keep in mind though, even at 60 and 60, considering the playoffs and how it's set up, they could get on a run these last few weeks and find themselves right back in the mix. We shall see. Particularly when you got to consider that most of the remaining games that those teams in the East have will be against each other. So they will beat up on each other a little bit, and that will probably help along the way. Now we got the Central Division there. As you see, Minnesota is 63 and 59, leading the division by 4 games over Cleveland and 8 games over my Detroit Tigers. But as you see by the records, 54, 66, 48, 72, yeah, that division is probably the worst division in baseball right now. I would safely say. Like I said, you got the one team that's barely above 500, and the rest of them not doing so smooth. And truthfully, I don't think we need to even worry about what happens in the Central Division. Keeping in mind that I feel like the Tigers, if they can get a couple more of those pitchers that they have been trying to get back from the DL healthy, might actually be able to make a little run at Minnesota here at the end of the season. Because after all, they've been playing them, and straight up, they look like the better team through most of these games with the Minnesota Twins the last couple weeks. And keep in mind that most of the remaining games are probably against the Central Division, a bad division, as you can see. Uh, you may look up, and lo and behold, we might be able to pull off a little something, something. That being said, us making the playoffs is about as good as it probably gets because I don't see them beating anybody in the East in the playoffs, nor whoever comes out of the West, which apparently at this point, according to the rankings, appears going to be the Texas Rangers at 72 and 48. Then, of course, you got Houston not too far behind them at 68-52. Now, as you see the rest of that division, you basically got Seattle and, of course, those Angels, the Los Angeles Angels, who, of course, have by far the best overall player in baseball, and one Shohei Ohtani. He is the man with the master plan, being both great all-star pitcher and DH. So basically, doing his thing both with the bat and pitching. But that being said, it's not enough. It's definitely not enough. And of course, they figure we'll take the big risk and try to go for a pennant and see if we can get Shohei to stay because we are a winner now. Based on these last couple weeks, it ain't looking good for LA at all. They made several trades during the trade deadline, and none of them really seem to be panning out too well at the moment, unfortunately. So yeah, it's not looking good for them in terms of making the playoffs right now. I say you're definitely looking at either Minnesota, maybe Cleveland. You're looking at Pickett pretty much in the East, and in the West you probably got maybe Houston coming out and probably Texas. So we'll see what happens with that. Now let's check out the National League right quick. Let's do that. In the National League, things are a little different. Keep in mind, you got the Dodgers once again on top of the division. They kind of went through some things during the middle of the season, but they seem to be back doing what they do this time of year. You got the Central Division where Milwaukee and Chicago and Cincinnati is all kind of around that same place. Give or take a few games. Then, of course, you got the best team by far in the National League at this point, the Atlanta Braves, crushing the National League East. Now, granted, Philly trying to make a little run, but no, at this point, it would take a major collapse by Atlanta for them to lose that National League East, and I do not see that happening at all. The Braves pretty much got everything you need to be a title contender this year. They got great pitching, excellent bullpen. They got a good bench, and of course, they got good hitters that don't only hit for power, but for average as well. Basically led by the person that's more than likely going to win the National League MVP, Ronald Acuna Jr., who's having an awesome season to the point to where he may be the first person ever to hit over 30 home runs and steal over 70 bases. In the great history of baseball, nobody has ever done that. Think about all the great base stealers of the past. Probably the only person to get close to that would be the great Ricky Henderson, who had a couple years where he flashed a little power, but nothing to the extent that what we're seeing from young Ronald Acuna Jr. So we will definitely see how that plays out for him. And bottom line is, I think at this point we're looking at the usual suspects going to the playoffs, with the exception of whatever goes on in the Central, and it's probably looking like a division title race between the Braves and the Dodgers. And at this point, if I was to pick one of those two, I'd definitely go with the Braves right now. Now, some teams again have put quite a bit of money into what they got going. Team I'm particularly talking about is those San Diego Padres, who have spent a fortune on people like Manny Machado and Juan Soto, and of course Tatis Jr., uh, Yu Darvish, and et cetera, et cetera. And all that major money is not really panning out to wins. It definitely don't look like it's going to pan out to a playoff run this year. So be interested to see what they do in the offseason, if they actually make some big moves, trade some folks, basically try to see if they can get into the Otani sweepstakes. They seem to have a lot of money that they are able to spend, but if they move a couple of those guys and clear up some space so they can get Otani, maybe that's the move. Because it definitely appears, at least, that Otani will probably either stay with the Angels or stay somewhere out west where he appears to be more comfortable. We got Hugh checking in. What's going on, brother Hugh? He says Matt Olson and Acuna have really been carrying that really good team. Absolutely. Like I said, overall, I think it's a good team, but in terms of the power, numbers, and the RBI men, Olson and Acuna Jr. in particular are definitely the guys that are go-to folks. You would have thought that with them letting people like Soler and Dansville Stansby go, that would definitely take away from some of the power numbers, but clearly not the case. They appear to be cruising right along. We got him checking in again. He says, I heard that San Diego is talking about extending Juan Soto. Yeah, that's definitely been talks in regards to that. But again, I'm curious to see what happens at the end of the season based on whatever their record is as to what their moves will be. I definitely don't see San Diego investing this type of money and then deciding, okay, well, we're just gonna kind of ride it out with what we got at the moment. I think that type of money was spent because they really wanted to contend for some championships, much like how the Texas Rangers have invested a lot of money into what they're trying to do. Now, unfortunately, a big part of what they wanted to do involved the pitcher that is now getting Tommy John surgery. We all know about that sad situation. But all that being said, they got a nice lineup over there in Texas, and don't be surprised if they make a little noise in the playoffs and perhaps find their way close to getting to the World Series. Perhaps I don't think they're gonna quite make it this year, but I definitely see them being in contention. So that being said, like I said, baseball is heating up. Overall, there are more people watching baseball this year. There are actually more people going to the games this year. So uh, baseball not completely dead, folks. I know some people like to talk about how baseball is dying and it is not America's game anymore. I mean, I would clearly say that football definitely king right now. But there are still a lot of people like myself that enjoy the baseball. So for those of you, that is your part of the show. Like I said, we'll check back in a couple weeks to see where the standings are and see possibly what type of playoff scenarios that we got going. He was saying, fire Aaron Boone the Fuffoon. Well, I would have to say if the Yankees end up in last place, here's the road. Keep in mind, back in the days of George Steinbrenner, this wouldn't even be an issue. I would say if George was still alive, Aaron would already be gone. He would have got fired probably even before the trade deadline. But the son deals with the Yankees a little differently than his father did. George Steinbrenner could not deal with his Yankees being this bad. It would drive him insane. he would do everything in his power to make things happen with that checkbook to make it to where, yeah, we're not going out like that, okay? It's time to get it in. But nonetheless, that's what's going on in the MLB. Let us now switch over to the W, also known as the WNBA, where we are deep into the season. We are about 9 games away from the end of the season, so probably another 3, 4 weeks. It'll be time for them playoffs. And we are wondering, for those of you that don't keep up with it as I or perhaps my buddy Hughes here does, what's going on in terms of the standings. Let's take a look at that right quick as we discuss. Here are our standings here in the W as they stand at the moment. As you see, there are clear divisions between the haves, the OKs, and the have-nots. The two teams that you do not see listed there are the Phoenix Mercury and the Indiana Fever. Those are the last two teams to lead. Both of those teams have about 8 wins so far this season. I think it's safe to say they are out of playoff contention already, even with 10 games to go. Understand that Indiana was the worst team in the league. They have the worst record in the league now. There's been some slight improvement. Keep in mind that last year they only won 5 games. The fact that they've won more games indicates that they are showing signs of improvement. But definitely work to be done. Understand something. In this year of the WNBA, it is probably in your better interest right now. If you're not going to be a playoff team, to just kind of work with what you got, let the rest of the season play out. Because I think it's safe to say this upcoming WNBA draft will probably be the best WNBA draft of all time. Understand it's been about 27 seasons of the WNBA. This draft coming up will probably be the best draft of all time. Consider some of the people that will probably be in the WNBA draft. You got, of course, the great one herself, Miss Angel Reese, who will probably come out of school at that point, being a senior. You, of course, have people like Paige Beckers, of course, the great Caitlin Clark, and you have a variety of other people coming out of school, such as the young lady whose name escapes me right now, that plays down there for South Carolina, 6'7", 6'11" wingspan, will probably dominate the post most of next year for South Carolina. You do have the lady from Canada, Miss Edwards, who plays for my UConn Lady Huskies, who will also be a very high pick, I'm sure. And there are several other people on that LSU squad that are going to be seniors. I do believe the young lady that transferred from Louisville, this is her senior year as well, so she'll be coming out. Like I said, just in watching the women's basketball this year, you will see that the skill level has definitely improved, and we are going to see some great college women's basketball that will definitely lead to a lot of those tremendous athletes finding themselves in the WNBA next year. And of course, if you are one of the teams with the worst records, you will be in the WNBA lottery because they do have a lottery like the NBA. And more than likely, you will get one of those great players to add to your mix. So for a team like Indiana, hang in there. And of course, for a team like the Phoenix Mercury, who of course are missing their main draw. I won't necessarily say their best player. I mean, truthfully, even at age 41, Anna Taurasi is still probably the best player on that Phoenix Mercury team. But of course, Brittany Griner, who has taken some time away from the game to deal with her mental health. Unfortunately, and dealing with the situation she dealt with last year, being in that prison in Russia, some of the blowback from her getting home and how she got home and just dealing with it in general has taken toll on Miss Griner. So we pray that things go well for her moving forward. And hopefully next year she will come back strong and have some great new teammates to play with as well. But anyway, that leaves us with the other 10 teams here in the W. Let's look at that listing again. Let's deal with the middle of the pack people first. Basically, as you see there, we got the Sparks at 12-18, Chicago 12-18, We got Washington at 14-16 in Minnesota. Now, out of those teams, the Minnesota Lynx will probably be the team you would take interest in. Nafisha Collier is their big scorer on that squad, and she is playing very good basketball right now. That team is a scrappy bunch. They are playing most teams well, with the exception of some of the top epsilon folks. And I definitely see them making the playoffs. Depending on how the seating set up, I can see them being perhaps in the semifinals, perhaps, if they continue to play the way they've been playing. As far as Washington goes, Elena Deladon, their big time leader, she's been dealing with injury issues again, so I don't think they're gonna quite make it. And Chicago, very scrappy, but definitely not the same team since Candace Parker has left. So yeah, more than likely those teams aren't going to get past the semifinals. Now let's deal with the real deal Holyfields here in the WNBA. You got those top four there: Dallas, Connecticut, the Liberty, and the Aces. Now, before I get to the Liberty and the Aces, let me talk about those other two teams in third and fourth right now. The Dallas Stars are clearly the surprise of the league right now. No question about it. Keep in mind, they were one of the bottom dwellers last year. They ended up getting several draft picks as they traded to get this person's pick, that person's pick. And unlike the Fever, it's worked out a lot better for them in terms of who they drafted and how well they are playing. Then, of course, you have Sabu Sabali, the young lady that played with Miss Anescu over there in Oregon, who has basically come to life. She is definitely one of the leading candidates for most improved player, outside of course, her old college teammate, which we'll get to. But yeah, she is playing some very good ball. The young lady they have in the post, who I believe I want to say she went to Mississippi State, 6'7", very dominant post player, plays extremely well, and plays off, of course, the engine that makes that team go, Miss Enrique Ugawale. I almost got it right this time. Enrique Ubawale. She is the young lady out of Notre Dame who is a scoring machine. Some nights she takes over games in terms of her scoring. She shoots well from the outside. She takes it to the hole. She's lost a considerable amount of weight since she's left Notre Dame, and it's definitely showed in her game. She is a very, very good scorer. And on a team that have a little bit more health, she would definitely make that team probably extremely difficult to beat. But that being said, they have a very good team there in Dallas. I like some of the people they have coming off the bench. They ended up keeping Odyssey Sims, who basically was somebody they picked up during the season as Crystal Dangerfield was missing for a while. She is now part of that squad, so that's definitely a deadly combo at the point guard position, both starting. She's such a beast, he's saying. I believe he's saying that about Ogubawale. I agree. He definitely is a quality scorer. But yeah, that is definitely the sleeper team that you need to look out for. The Dallas Wings, okay? And understand, for those of you here in Detroit, that might be a team that you might want to cheer for, because keep in mind, before they were the Dallas Wings, they were the Tulsa Wings. For Tulsa Wings, they were the Tulsa Shock. And of course, before they were the Tulsa Shock, they were, that's right, the Detroit Shock. That is what happened to your Detroit Shock. They went to Tulsa, and then from Tulsa, they went to Dallas, and now currently they are the Dallas Wings. So anyway, then of course the other team that I mentioned there, the Connecticut Sun, they definitely play good half court game. Not quite as dynamic from the perimeter. However, Danielle Bonner, one of the top 10 scorers of all time in the WNBA, is basically their vocal leader. And on nights where she is playing strong, she is definitely a problem. Now, one of the better players on their team, that would be the young lady that came out of Maryland, the one they call Bree Bree. She is out for the season, unfortunately, had an unfortunate ACL type injury. And with her missing, it's going to be real tough for them to get anywhere past the semifinal. They really needed somebody like her for some of the better teams in the league. Which brings us to those two squads that I mentioned that are currently leading the W. That is the Las Vegas Aces and the New York Liberty, who have, as early as I believe that was Monday, they played one another. And keep in mind, they've played each other twice now in the regular season. And both times the Aces got they beat. I mean, the Liberty whooped them convincingly. And so, of course, me and my buddy Hugh kind of went back and forth about that today. What was it that made it that way? Keep in mind, uh, did you see the record of the Las Vegas Aces? Did I show you that? They are currently 27-3, the best record in the W and one of the best records in the history of the W after 30 games. They've only lost 3 games. One of those games, of course, to the Liberty, and then the other 2 were to Dallas, and I believe they lost to the Fever. I believe they lost the game to, and basically that game they really wasn't with us that game. You know, every team kind of had that one night where you just ain't really doing what you need to do. No, actually, that was Connecticut that they lost to. That was that night. Now, honestly, Dallas, they played them tough. They almost beat them the first game they played, and the second game they beat them because it was kind of almost a back-to-back home and road type thing, and travel definitely came to play. And then, of course, that was around the time that Candace Parker got hurt for the Aces, and they do miss her when it comes to the bigger games. And that is why they did not do it. Pretty much most of the games that they have won rather convincingly because the Aces are very good when they are ahead. Now, on the other hand, when they play from behind, that's where the problems come in. They are not so good at playing from behind. What's up, EZ? Glad to see you back full time. I thank you very much for that, my friend. Thank you for checking in. Appreciate it. We just talking some WNBA right now. And right now we're talking about the 2 best teams in the WNBA, the Liberty and the Aces. Now, of course, I would say if we were doing MVP votes right now, the 2 people in contention are basically the 2 best people on those 2 teams. That would be Asia Wilson for the Aces, and of course Brianna Stewart, young Stewie, from the New York Liberty. They are not only the 2 best post players in the W, not named basically the 2 best players in the post in the W. Period. I'll go that far. I mean, because like I said, Brittany Griner was healthy and then everything was everything. That might be a different story, but all things considered, it's them 2 right now. And right now, out of those 2, I got to get a nod to Stewie because she is the more complete player of the 2. Understand that the Aces do lead the W in blocks, but also understand that the Liberty are the better defensive team. And that definitely comes into play when they are playing from behind. Because when they play from behind, they don't play quite so good. They have to rely a lot on the perimeter shooting. And when those shots are more rushed than planned, that tends to make it very difficult, particularly when they are playing good teams. So when you play a great team, because I would say that the Liberty are a great team, particularly when you consider you got Stewie, you got Donnell Jones, who was a former MVP herself, playing center, and then of course you have the person who probably will win the most improved player this year, Miss Anescu. Because right now, when you look particularly at the second half of the season, ever since the All-Star game, when Anescu won that three-point contest, there's been a spark in that young lady, and it has led to her showing out. Okay, understand this as it stands right now is the season in the WNBA where the most points have been scored ever, as in all the teams combined are scoring more points than they ever have in any season previous. A lot more 3-point shooting being done, a lot more 3-pointers being made. And speaking of which, you who brought up the point that he felt like the the Liberty won and the Aces lost because their 3-point shooting is not quite so good. Let me show you this statistic here, my friend, if you are still watching. This is the top 10 players in the WNBA in terms of field goal 3-point percentage. And also we have a list of what they have shot and made. As you see, the top two shooters in the WNBA for 3-pointers are members of the Aces starting lineup. You have Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray, who are both shooting over 45% from three. You also have Miss Anescu right there, who plays for the Liberty at 44.7, and right now is shooting at an alarmingly great rate in terms of her 3-point shooting ability. So it does come down to who has the best overall game. And right now, and looking at those two squads, it's definitely looking like the Liberty, because right now, I think it'd be a different story if Candace Parker was actually playing in health. I think they'd be right there with one another if it was those two teams in full. Keeping in mind that right now they have Kia Stokes in the starting lineup for the Aces. She is a good defender. She's a good post defender, but she's not good at defending post play, if that makes any sense. Basically, if you are a quality post player, she tends not to do as well against you defensively. So when you put her up against a person like Stewie, and Stewie is on her game, hard for her to contend with that. But if you put her against basic post player A, Kia Stokes definitely looks like somebody who could actually start in this league. However, she is not a scorer. Even back in her days at UConn, she never was truly a scorer. So that comes as no surprise. And overall, that is a key component as to why they are having their troubles with a team like the Liberty that has definitely great post play. He was saying they were still getting dominated, and that caused a huge concern. Too much firepower on the Liberty. I would say that in terms of the starting lineups, the firepower not even equal. I would actually say the Aces have a little bit more firepower in terms of the starting lineup. Clearly, the Liberty have the better bench play. I would definitely go as far as to say not only do they have better bench play, but with probably the exception of the Dallas Wing, they probably have the best bench in the W right now. And that definitely is a key as to why they are so dominant against those Aces. That being said, we get another shot to see what it's going to look like, because tomorrow, yes, the Liberty and the Aces play once again in the WNBA, and that's going to be a good game. I'm definitely planning on checking it out, because more than likely you are getting in that game the preview to what will probably be the WNBA finals, all things considered, between those two squads. Because when you got one team with 3 wins and one team with 6, and they pretty much play at a level that's a little bit cutting above everybody else in the league, it'd be very hard to see them lose in a final, particularly when they are going to be top 2 teams and will get the first round bye and not have to play pretty much the one and done type scenario. So I'm definitely interested to see how the rest of the season plays out. I do believe the WNBA season ends, I want to say early September, and we will get the playoffs at that time, and we'll go from there. Of course, in the past, it's probably been a lot harder for you to find a good WNBA game station for you to watch it on. Right now, ESPN 123W, all showing WNBA games. You got the Ion Network that has been showing WNBA every Friday. You have ABC and ESPN that pretty much show WNBA games during the weekend. And of course, you have stations like CBS Sports and NBC Sports that have been showing WNBA games also. And I will tell you that pretty much all these stations and sports networks that I mentioned will also be showing women's college basketball this season. When it comes out, you will see probably more women's games than you ever have before, which is great. Primarily, though, because of the fact that in terms of viewership, women's basketball viewership has gone up over 50% in the last couple seasons, ever since the pandemic, basically. So that's actually good news, and I think that would definitely lead to some WNBA expansion in the next couple of years. So if you don't have a WNBA team and you feel like your city will be able to support one, perhaps it is on the way. There's already been talk about some of the minor league teams, secondary teams that are out here. Keep in mind, there is a minor league here in Michigan for women's basketball that a couple of those teams might actually end up being in the W. So let's stay tuned and see what happens, shall we? But in the meanwhile, I say you enjoy the rest of your WNBA season. It's been a good one. Check it out. Like I said, we've had more scoring, and keep in mind the magic number in the NBA is usually 50. I would say in the WNBA the magic number is 40. At this point in the season, I believe it's been 10 different players who have scored over 40 points in a game this season. And I do believe, if I remember correctly, Breanna Stewart has done it not once, not twice, but 3 times now, over 40 points. So there's that. And of course, I definitely want to congratulate the great Diana Taurasi, becoming the first WNBA player to score over 10,000 points in a career. She is the WNBA's all-time leading scorer. So congrats to her on that accomplishment. And beyond that, I'll still be watching, and hopefully you guys will check it out. Now we're going to take a quick little break. After we do so, we are going to talk about some of the other sporting events and things that I have seen and want to address before we head out. And that being said, let me find something to promote here on the Nighthawk Network. You know we got to look out for this guy.
Hello, hello, hello. It's another glorious day, my T-Sippers, and you know what time it is. I hope you have all of your comforts together because it's time to dish tea. And you're dishing tea, darlings, with Big Meat.
Can't wait. It's time to dish tea with Big Meat. It's time to dish tea with Big Meat. It's time to dish tea with Big Meat. It's time to dish tea with Big Meat.
Darling.
Yeah, baby, we back. Let me, of course, shout out my people's Road to Stardom. Please make sure you check out Road to Stardom Radio. As you see, we play nothing but the best of indie music and give you star-studded interviews. Yes, Road is doing her thing, and I do want y'all guys to check it out. That is her Facebook page. So if you are looking for Road, if you look for Road Stardom Radio, that should pop up. And by all means, please become one of her followers and like and subscribe as we support each other in these endeavors of small podcasters and that is part of the Nighthawk Network and some of our people that are down with us. Road is definitely down with us, and we definitely down with Road. So by all means, please check out my buddy Road's stuff and support her. And keep in mind, she also has a link on her Instagram page as well, where she has items for sale that help in her endeavor. So by all means, if you like some of the stuff, don't check it out bad. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. That being said, we are back on the show. We are talking some of the summer things that have transpired in this summer. Keep in mind, I just got an update that unfortunately one of my heroes, and granted, I am older than her, but I still consider her one of my heroes. That would be the great Venus Williams, has lost her second round match today in the Cincinnati Open. Pretty much the tune up for most tennis players before the U.S. Open that pretty much starts in a couple weeks. She actually won her first round match, being one of the oldest tennis players to win a first round tournament ever at age 43. So yeah, just the fact that she's still going and still able to not only play competitive tennis, but actually beat some of the top people still at age 43 is remarkable when you consider some of her health issues that she's had, the fact that she's been playing professionally since almost 30 years now. I know that sounds crazy, particularly in the world of tennis. By usually 30, most of your average or above average tennis players are pretty much calling it done at that point. She is in her mid 40s and still playing quality competitive tennis. That is remarkable. So yeah, I'm very interested to see if after her sister has the second baby, will she at 41 decide, let's give it one more go? Keep in mind, she had planned on not retiring not too long ago before we found out that she was pregnant once again. Would not be surprised if she gives it one more shot if she still feels like she can be competitive. I mean, we can only wonder what Venus's career would have been like if not for her sister. Keep in mind, she was dominant for a few years up until the time when her sister came in pro tennis and started winning and beating everybody, including her, to win all the titles that she won. So who knows how many more titles Venus would have won if there was not such a thing as Serena Williams in professional tennis. Who knows? Anyway, we got that going. Some of the things that we saw from Sunday, of course, a few weeks ago, we had the big fight between Terrence Bud Crawford and Earl Spence Jr. Definitely have been looking forward to that fight for years, to be honest, because we were looking for that fight to happen 4 or 5 years ago. It didn't happen for the usual political reasons that most big fights in boxing don't happen these days. They finally got around to throwing them up, and unfortunately, we did not get the fight we were hoping for. I really thought it was going to be a straight up war. I thought we was going to get something similar to Hearns Hagler or Hagler Hearns or Hearns Leonard. You know, one of those big mega fights from back in the day between the middles. This was not that. Pretty much Crawford dominated most of that fight. He won by TKO in the ninth round, which I was very surprised by. He knocked Spence down several times that I was equally surprised by. It was just not a good fight overall, not what we wanted or expected. And of course, you know, there's the possibility that there may be a rematch at 154 in December. The more people are analyzing that, and the few times I've watched that fight now, Earl, I don't want to see you fight that dude. At this point, if that's what you're looking like in the ring, I kind of got to agree with what Stephen A. Smith has been saying. Maybe you should take a little break from boxing and kind of get your mind right, see where you are in terms of your injuries. Keep in mind that Earl Spence Jr., as we know, has had 2 very serious car accidents and a couple minor ones. And some of that clearly has affected his ability to box at the highest level. And I'm concerned that if you get in that ring and somebody is looking to do you way more harm than Crawford could have did you, that it might get real ugly. Keep in mind, we all remember the great Muhammad Ali, and who knows if he still would have been here if not for some of the fights after the fact that he was probably behind his prime that he ended up taking. Sometimes you just got to know when to shut it all down. I'm not saying Spence should do that per se. He didn't look that bad to me. I still feel like he's still got a few quality fights left in him, just maybe not with the best of the best. And I really felt Crawford would have beat him anyway, but the way that fight went, I wasn't too pleased with. Now, of course, the next big fight that's supposed to come up is in September, as it appears that it's definitely going to go down between one of the Charo twin brothers and that man that they know as Canelo Alvarez. Apparently, they're going to fight somewhere around the 160 range. Charlo was on TV today talking a lot of stuff about what he's going to do to Canelo. I don't know, bruh. I don't know about all that there. Canelo ain't no punk. Now, I understand. Everybody saw the fight between him and Money Mayweather. You know, Floyd Mayweather was on a whole nother level, okay? The defense, the ability to learn in the ring, his ability to switch from left to right, much like Bud Crawford could. Yeah, Canelo hadn't seen nothing like that. He wasn't ready for that. I think he's ready for you, Mr. Charo. you might want to calm some of that mouth down a little bit. You may come to regret it on fight night. That being said, a lot of the other mega fights that we would like to see, they just ain't been happening as much, and that's part of why boxing is down. That's also part of why, as the pay-per-view money starts to go up in terms of what they want to charge us, there are people paying it still, but then there are basic person A saying not so much. I mean, even people that can obtain the fights through whatever means, we'll leave it at that. They ain't so pressed to do so. I mean, I gotta be honest, most of these fights I ain't really up for. I just assume watch the reruns and the condensed versions on YouTube the next day. Seeing them live in the action, not so much. Now, of course, UFC is still growing. It's probably not growing quite as much as it was pre-pandemic, but people are still definitely checking it out. There are definitely UFC fight fans out there. There are actually places here in the city that have UFC fight parties on a regular basis where you can go and check out the UFC because they pretty much have a event pretty much damn near every weekend. That being said, there's not a lot of major fights that I'm seeing on any of those cards that's overly interesting to me at this point. It's not quite the names that we had 4 or 5 years ago when you had people like John Bones Jones and Korean Zombie and people like that that were dominating the sport and bringing that extra thing to it. And of course, Conor McGregor, people like that that basically brought that extra excitement to it that we don't quite have now with some of the lesser attractions. So yeah, not over interested. And then of course, we got to talk about the World Cup for a minute. The Women's World Cup that's still going on. It seems like they've been playing soccer for about 3 months now. And it's like every morning I get up expecting to watch my Fox 2 News, and there's the damn people playing soccer. Now keep in mind that Americans are supposed to dominate in this World Cup. And we should be looking forward to watching them on Sunday in the final. No, didn't happen that way at all. They ran all that smack and they gonna do that and pasta 3P and all that. Them girls played off. Okay? Even in the first game where they played what team was that? The Philippines, I think it was. It don't matter. They were supposed to blow them out, and they didn't. They did not. They did not impress at all. And that was the game that they scored the most goals in. After that, they hardly scored at all in those last few games. And of course, as soon as they hit the knockout round, they messed around and got knocked out. In penalty kicks, no less. When we supposedly have some of the best soccer players in the world right now, and we couldn't win on the penalty kicks, Miss Rapinoe, with all the commercials they did for you, I gotta admit that Nike commercial that they did for Rapinoe is probably one of the best Nike commercials ever. You heard what I said, ever. Just look up Rapinoe Nike commercial. You see what I'm talking about. That being said, she did not prove herself worthy of it in this World Cup at all. It seemed like as soon as that game was over, she couldn't get on the microphone quick enough. I retire, I'm done. It's like she was saying that literally on her way out to death. I'm done. And if I remember correctly, I did see an update in regards to women's soccer. Let me find that and read it for you. USWNT manager, as in the women's national team manager, Vlatko Anderson resigns after the World Cup. That's right, the coach even retired today. Him quit, as he should. He did a terrible job. Clearly, if that's the best that we had to show. Understand, we would have made it to, say, the semifinals and lost in penalty kicks at that point. I could live with that. After all, winning 3 in a row in the women's game has never been done. But to go out in a knockout round and get knocked out in the first part of the knockout round, sad display. And considering that most of the younger kids were the ones doing some of the main playing, you could look at that as half empty, half full. On the one hand, you could say, well, we got these kids, and at least they got the experience now, and hopefully next time around, they'll be ready to go. Or you can look at it as like, okay, we got these kids, and these kids suck. They ain't no real ones. We need the next batch of kids to come on up and take their spot. However you view it, bottom line is we ain't winning no World Cup. And to be honest, I don't know who's left in this boy, and I don't care. And that's part of the problem. Soccer's supposed to be growing in this country, and the women winning the World Cup definitely would have helped in terms of that. Pretty much since the U.S. is out, America don't really care. There's some few of y'all that do, but let's be honest. Most of us, we ready for us to just go ahead and get our regular news cycle back here at Fox 2. So hurry up and finish this doggone World Cup so we can do that. But on the other hand, my friends, let's talk about what's going on in the MLS, where there is a young man by the name of Lionel Messi, who has come to the States to play soccer and has taken over the MLS. You hear what I'm saying? I'm saying he's been with Miami about, say, 3 weeks now, maybe, and he is scoring big time, okay? Now, understand, your typical MLS game is like most soccer games on that level, 3-1, 2-1, zip. Whatever the case may be, it pretty much seems like whatever game Messi has played in for Miami, he didn't score or had something to do with the scoring as an assistant. He is that guy. And understand, we are not in prime Messi years, okay? Messi is on that end of the spectrum in terms of his playing ability. But even at his mid-30s, Messi is showing why many consider him not only the best player in the world right now, but perhaps the best player of all time, the GOAT of soccer players, okay? Not Pele, not Maradona, not that dude, the other dude. I always forget his name. It'll come to me. But anyway, Ronaldo, there we go, that dude. Even better than he. And then, of course, there's Mbappe, if you are familiar with soccer. And, of course, I imagine seeing what Messi's doing in the MLS, would not be surprised if some team tries to pull Mbappe on over here next year to see what he going to do. But nonetheless, that's what's going on. If you want to see soccer played at a supreme level and actually be somewhat entertaining, check out Miami's games. You can find them on Apple Plus. Nonetheless, that is what the summer's like. Outside that, I ain't been watching a lot of sports, just those things. So that's all I got to say about that. Next week, we are back to the sports talk again. This time, we'll be talking about good old college sports. Because there are some things that are changing in the world of college sports, and it is changing the environment forever. So we're going to talk about that because it's going to be sports week here on the network. It's going to be a college week, or school week, I should say, in terms of the programming. So there's that. Also, be on the lookout, people. There's going to be a third Nighthawk Network Detroit podcast. We have finally come to a name for it. It's going to be From Hollywood to the Hood. It's the name of it. It's going to be my entertainment podcast, where we talk about entertainment news from Hollywood and music and television and such. I am still looking for people who might want to co-host that show with me. So if you would like to do the entertainment news and you find it interesting and have some things to say about it, feel free to hit me up on my messenger and we can talk about you either doing the show as one of the co-hosts or being a special correspondent or something to that effect. Would love to see how that works out. But in the meanwhile, this has been the Big Buck Sports Report. I am your boy E talking that sports. Tune in next week for more of that talk of the sports. Until then, y'all have a great week. As always, be blessed. Don't stress. Get your prayer on and let God deal with the rest. All right? There is no, and I repeat, no outro for this show at this time. Production is still working on that. So just like that, we